What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the show. So today we're going to do an update. I want to do an update on the $200 raise for Social Security. Okay. Now, right now we know that politicians aren't talking about any type of a raise for Social Security. However, we're starting to see the makeup when it comes to Congress. Okay. And so we're going to talk about the Senate today and the possibilities of moving forward with some type of a raise for Social Security or some type of an increase for Social Security. So that's what we're going to focus on today. But first off, you guys can do me a favor. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit that little bell notification, and then click all. That way you'll get notified anytime we put out a video. We put out daily videos. So by hitting that bell notification and clicking all, you should be getting an update every day. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about this. Let's go over to our desktop so you guys can see what I'm seeing here. And what I want to talk about first is I want to talk about what we're looking at when it comes to the makeup of Congress as well. We obviously know what's going on in the White House, right? We know President Biden is there. So that is already decided. Now, when it comes to the House and the Senate, we know that the Senate, and they just announced this yesterday, or the projections are that Democrats will take the Senate. Okay, so they will remain in control of the Senate. That's the easiest way to say it. So we know that already. We know that we have the 50 votes that's needed for the Democrats to maintain control of the Senate. So right now it is for Democrats, it's 50, and for Republicans right now it's 49. We're still waiting for Georgia. Okay, so we're waiting for Georgia, and that's going to be a runoff. And we know that that is not in play anymore when it comes to the majority, because the vice president, Kamala Harris, comes in and breaks a tie if there is a tie in the Senate, just like we've seen over the last 2 years. And so that's what we're looking at right now when it comes to the makeup of the Senate. So Democrats have control, and what that means is leadership goes to the Democrats. They're able to call things to the floor, so they can call bills to the floor. They can move bills through the Senate. And so that's where we are when it comes to the Senate. Now with the House, it's a little bit different right now. We don't have any projections. We know that the Republicans have a slight lead, and it's likely that they're going to take control of the House. Okay, and so that's how we're going to play this. We're going to play this like Republicans have taken leadership in the House, and the leadership in the Senate, the Democrats control. Okay, so that's the way we're going to look at this. So we'll put an R here for the House of Representatives, and then we're going to put a D here for the Senate. And then when it comes to the White House, of course, there's a D there. So looking at the two chambers, you have Democrats controlling one, Republicans controlling the other, and then the White House, you have controlled by the Democrats. And so that is the makeup right now. So let's go a step further. So let's say when it comes to the $200 raise that we've been hearing about for the last 2 years, and they haven't moved forward with anything, but we do know that there's certain bills that are out there. One of the most popular bills is a $2,400 raise for Social Security, and you're hearing this from Senator Bernie Sanders, who wants to get this bill passed. Okay, so let's run through this and see the possibilities of this happening. So first off, you are going to need some Republican support, and if you have no Republican support, then this will not go anywhere. And that was the problem for the last 2 years when it comes to any type of an expansion to Social Security. You didn't have Republicans supporting it at all. Now, just based on the results of the election, this last midterm election, we might see some more support from Republicans. And the reason is because Republicans expected this to be a landslide. They expected the red wave. You kept hearing about the red wave. And that is not the case. And so what that means is Republicans are going to have to look at their strategy and say, hey, this didn't work. The plan of saying that we have open borders and crime is on the rise and inflation is out of control, which you could argue that some of those things are actually true, but they didn't have a plan. They didn't want to put a plan forward. They didn't say, okay, this bill will address the open borders, if they want to say that. This bill will address the inflation. This bill will address so they didn't put anything forward as far as a plan. So the American people, we know what the problems are. We know inflation is just out of control, but what are you going to do about it? And they didn't have a plan to say, this is what we're going to do about it. This is how we're going to change it. Okay. And if you have one politician, he might have come up and said, okay, this is what I want to do. This is my plan. But they didn't have anything universal. They couldn't go to, okay, this is the talking point that we're going to tell our constituents. And so that was a problem. And I think that's what really hurt them. It's easy to address the issues. It's easy to say, this is bad, this is bad, this is bad. But what are you going to do about it? You are electing someone to represent you. And so how are they going to represent you? Right? Just like if it was an attorney and you're trying to choose between attorneys and you have one attorney that's just telling you all the problems, but not telling you how they're going to move forward. And then you have another attorney that's telling you, you know what, these are the problems. Yeah, these are the problems, but this is how I want to move forward. You're probably going to go with that attorney that's telling you how they want to move forward and not go with the attorney that's just telling you what all the problems are, because you already know what the problems are. You're in trouble, or whatever the situation is, you know that you're in trouble, but how are you going to get me out of trouble? Or how are you going to benefit me? How are you going to represent me? Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at this. So $200 rates for Social Security. Let's say that the Bernie Sanders plan gets passed in the Senate, because it's possible. It's possible for them to pass it in the Senate if they get a little bit of support from Republicans. Let's say they get these 60 votes that they need, okay? So they get the 60 votes that they need, and they pass it. Now, once they pass this, they can send it over to the House. Now, if the House is being controlled by Republicans, of course, that's a problem, because if you have no support from Republicans, you can't move forward. It's not going to go anywhere. Basically, the Republicans will not even bring it to the floor. So if McCarthy is the leader, he just won't bring it to the floor, and it will just die. Okay, it will die in the House. And so that's one of the roadblocks that they have. Now, let's say they figure out a way to make this bipartisan, and they negotiate, and they're trying to work out some kind of a deal. And if that's the case, it could potentially pass. And like I said before, Republicans now, I think they're going to be in a situation where they're going to look at, okay, we actually need to do something. We can't just sit here in the House for the next 2 years and expect better results in 2024. We actually have to legislate. And so this is a good thing. And the fact that we're looking at a narrow margin, if Republicans take over the House, it'll be a narrow margin. They don't need that many votes in order to move forward with something. All they need is a majority. Okay, so that just means they need a couple of Republicans, or let's say, we don't know what the exact numbers look like right now, but let's say right now we know you need 218 representatives in order to take leadership, okay? So let's just say they get the 218. And so when it comes to the Democrats, let's say they get 217. So let's say it's a very, very narrow margin. And it should be somewhere around there. It might be Republicans 220 and then the Democrats 215. It's going to be somewhere close. And so they're not going to need that many votes in order to move forward with legislation. Okay, they can pull a few Republicans on their side if it comes to a bill that they want to pass, and they can get it done. Now, the Republicans can do the same thing, but that's only in the House, okay, because it's just a majority vote in the House. They're still going to need the 60 votes in the Senate in order to move forward with anything. So we'll do the reverse in a second, but I just wanted to show you this. So let's say it's very close. So let's say the Senate finds a way to pass this $200 raise for Social Security. They send it over to the House. The House, you have a few Republicans that say, yes, you know what? This sounds like a good thing. And then Kevin McCarthy, because if he's the leader, he's the one that can bring this to the floor. He's the only one. So let's say he's in favor of an expansion of Social Security. And so he brings it to the floor. They vote on it. It gets passed in the House, and then it goes to the White House for signature. Now, I do want to tell you, it's not impossible for this to happen, but it's very unlikely for us to see this happen. So the $200 raise for Social Security, it still has life, But the reality is you have a lot of Republicans that have talked about not wanting to move forward with any type of a raise for Social Security. And so, because if we're looking at a situation where the House is run by Republicans, they're just not going to address it. And that's the reality. And so that's what we're looking at when it comes to the raise. Now, let's just say, and I want to talk about just how this would play out when it comes to legislation as a whole, because we still need, I mean, you're still hearing people talk about reforming Social Security. You're still hearing politicians talk about that, right? And so if that is the case, how would that play out? And that could happen. That could very possibly happen in the next 2 years. And like I said, there's going to be a real push. Republicans are going to have to really look at this last election and say, hey, we need to actually do something. And so maybe this is one of those things that they would want to do. They might want to move forward with reforming Social Security, putting it in a safe state when it comes to the trust fund. And so they'll have to negotiate that through, but that's a possibility. Another possibility is a child tax credit. There's already support for a child tax credit amongst Democrats and Republicans, at least in the Senate. And so because of that, there's a very, very good possibility that they can get this passed in 2023. Okay. Now, I know there are people, a lot of people on my channel are retired and they're receiving Social Security, or they're just receiving Social Security, SSI, SSDI, and they're thinking, you know what, the child tax credit is not going to help me. I don't have any children. Well, like I said before, and I said this is like a year ago, I said this when the child tax credit was actually being implemented. When it comes to the child tax credit, if it is successful, because the whole goal of the child tax credit was to bring children out of poverty. Okay, that's the whole goal when it comes to the child tax credit. You also have elderly people in poverty. And so if the child tax credit works, and I would say that it was successful, but if they get it implemented again and it's working, that's when there's a strong argument, okay, we have elderly people as well that are in poverty. How do we get those people out of poverty? And so you see how that works. They could actually move forward with different legislation just to help people who are elderly and in poverty. Okay, so that's what we're looking at when it comes to the next 2 years. Now, I like to keep it straight with you guys. And when it comes to the $200 raise for Social Security, there's a possibility, but it's highly unlikely at this point. Now, we have to see what happens with the House, because if the Democrats find a way to maintain control of the House, well, now that possibility is even greater. Okay, now there's a better chance of moving forward with some type of a raise for Social Security. And so that's something that we're going to have to keep our eye on, and we'll know in a couple of days if the Democrats are able to maintain control of the House. But it's highly unlikely that they will be able to do that. But if they are, then now we can really start talking more about a $200 raise for Social Security. So that's all I have for this video. If you guys have any questions or comments, post them down below. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe for more, and I'll talk to you in the next one. Bye.